It is 6:33 on Monday, January 8th, 2018, and we will call the school committee meeting to order. We will, for the first time, switch to consent agenda today, and we have our minutes in our consent agenda. Is there a motion to, how do we make the motions for consent agenda? Approve the consent agenda? Okay, so is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make that motion. I'll second.
Thank you. Any comments on anything included in the consent agenda? Okay. All in favor to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I will insert one item that Kathy, thank you, she made me aware of. Last time when we approved the minutes from November 6th, Jen was the first person to make the motion. However, she wasn't here for that meeting. So I will ask the committee to please make another motion to approve the minutes from November 6th, 2017. Deanne, you weren't here either, apparently.
Really?
Yep. You can vote for it, but, you know, the motion ideally comes from folks who were here.
What date was that?
I'll make the motion.
November 6th. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you.
I don't remember.
Any comments, edits? Okay, all in favor to approve the minutes from November 6th, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. That's that.
So I guess I'm abstaining then.
You don't have to. You can vote for the minutes, even though you're not here, but again, ideally, the motion comes from folks who are there. Do we have any visitors? We don't. Okay, hopefully next time. And the weather is not really helping folks traveling around anyway. Our student rep is not here. She doesn't have anything really, and she asked whether or not we could move her to our second meeting because all of her regional and state meetings happen before our second meeting in the month. So she may have more to share with us if it's possible. Going into new business, we have a guest. Hi, Bill.
Hi, how are
Good
you?
to see you.
Good.
Good. I'm sure you're going to introduce yourself, so I won't do that.
Okay.
Come and join us. You can actually take Annabelle's seat right here.
Okay, so that's like,
Yeah, that's a good place, right? You can hear. Yeah.
Are we all taking one?
yes, please.
I think I have a few.
Thank you.
One for the record?
So I'm Bill Deal. I'm the Executive Director of the Collaborative for Educational Services in Northampton, and Granby is a member of our collaborative. So I'm delighted to be here meeting with you. I always love meeting with school committees. I think I'd said this last time I met with you. I think you guys do the most important job, one of the most important jobs, not the most, but one in the country. I think part of the backbone of American education is we are locally controlled, locally elected, really care about the kids, and you guys serve a very, very important function. So it's really an honor. It's a cliche to say it's an honor, but it is in fact for me an honor to meet with school committees, and I really appreciate your help. I want to recognize Superintendent Stanton, who's been a real supporter of the collaborative. Of course, our representative, Mike Simpson, and our former representative, Tom Ray, and of course,
We almost had
Marie-
one more person actually who was a former representative as
Yeah,
well,
Jen.
but she's not here tonight.
Okay, good,
You were going to have 4 out of 5 almost, Bill,
good, we're getting there.
who had some connection to the collaborative.
So you must be next to you.
I'm the outsider.
Yeah, so you're next on me, okay. So let me just say quickly what I want to do is just talk a little bit about who we are, because I think most of you know us pretty well, but more to talk about what we do with Granby, and then some of the things that are coming down the pike you might be interested in. So I'll just give you a little snapshot based on a report we just did to DESE. Every year we have to do a report to the Department of Education about everything that we do. You have to show that we're cost effective, you have to do comparisons with similar programs. It's a 150-page report, but it also helps us collect information from all of the agencies about what we do. So it turns out we do an awful lot of stuff. I'll give you a few statistics to let you know kind of the size and what we do. We've got 36 districts, as you know. We also do statewide work for Department of Youth Services and special education institutional settings. We have a budget of $38 million, a lot of that's state contracts. We receive no money from the state except grants and contracts. So the state gives us no allocation at all. We really have to hustle and be entrepreneurial in terms of supporting ourselves. So we write grants all the time. We have 70 different grants we worked on last year. A lot of them help our member districts in different ways, but we really are entrepreneurial in that regard. Last year we served 3,300 students in our direct service programs. We served 1,500 children in early childhood and kindergarten programs, and we served 5,500 educators in all our different professional development services. In addition to that, we had 150 site-based contracts with districts, including 2 with Granby. So we have a pretty broad reach, primarily in the 2 counties here, but also statewide as well. So let me talk about Granby. So what I did was I emailed all my different folks with projects and say, send me what you do in Granby. And I have to say, I was absolutely astonished by what I got back. I guess Granby may be the biggest user of the collaborative in the area. I think Northampton and Amherst may give you a run for it, but I was very impressed by how much you use the collaborative. And I think it's really especially important to me because you're one of our small and rural districts. And part of the purpose of the collaborative is to be able to do things with districts where you can't do very well on your own. So you'll see some evidence that we go through some of the things you're doing with you. So I think in many ways Granby is almost the poster child for what a collaborative can do and we're able to do with them. So behind the very first thing you have in your packet is, I have the wrong packet, is a description of all our services. So Deanne, if you aren't familiar with it, this might be something to look at, all the different things that we do, the services overview. I think the rest of you know this fairly well. So behind that is the information about Granby. And the first thing is our district usage chart. So we go and we basically look at all different services and then we put what happens in each district. So you can see pretty much Granby uses almost everything. You don't use technology as much as some others, but almost everything else you take full advantage of. So you're very active partners in many different ways. And then I'll talk more detailed about each of these. But basically we have special education services, alternative pathways, a lot of professional development. We do technical assistance like Spiffy Coalition that you're part of, do technology of different kinds, early childhood, a lot of that, and enrichment programs, for example, after school. So turn that page to the next one, and now you've got a packet stapled together that basically gives you more detail about all of these. So the first ones, pages 2 and 3, list all the different professional development that your teachers or administrators have taken part in since 2015. So 2015, 2016, and this year up until December. And you can see the wide variety of things that your teachers have taken part in. You know, usually 1 or 2 people coming to workshops that we give in their own particular area. A lot of these workshops are free. So the ones about civics education, for example, are free because we have a grant from the federal government to provide this. We have some other free ones as well. We also have a number of ones that are professional learning communities, a TIE conference, but a real range of things. A lot focused on equity and inclusion and also on special education support and services. There's some also on ELL supports and kids living in poverty. So you can see a whole range of things with 1 to 3 people involved. You always are active in these legal seminars that we do every year with Ginny Tate. Those are full of all kinds of interesting information. I both love and hate going to them. I love going to them because so much information. I hate going to them because there's so much that occurs every year in the area of special education. It's such a changing area, and to keep up with it is quite a challenge, but Ginny gives a full support of that. So that's the kind of individual professional development. The next page, page 4, first of all, talks about the site-based. I mentioned we did a lot of site-based. This means basically that Cheryl would call us up and say, we need support in a certain area. Can you come in and do a PD for my staff? Not individual, but for my staff. And last spring we did 2 of them, one on behavioral strategies and one on math strategies. I think math was probably for the high school, I believe. Is that right? Yeah. We have licensure programs, so it helps teachers either get a second license or in some cases a first license in certain areas. You've got 4 educators who've been taking licensure courses, and one candidate is right now enrolled in the administrative leadership program. So this is a really kind of a friendly to people who work full-time. It's one Saturday a month and then online after that. So it really allows folks to help build up their capacity. And especially I think that teachers look to it for second licenses in special education or ELL, which is a real need, as you know. So that's that. Then below that is our early childhood professional development. A very active department, does a lot in Granby. And these are there are 14 workshops that people from Granby took part in. You can see the range of those things as well. So again, supports our parents in all kinds of different ways, especially work with parents who are struggling with behavioral issues or kids who are emerging with special needs, as well as just basic transition kinds of things like working with curriculum and so on. Any questions so far? This is all the PD that we do. Next area is other early childhood activities. So first of all, we run the Granby Playgroup, as you may know, which meets in the Granby Free Library. And there's a description of some of the things that Marty Weichman does with that. Real focused on STEM, et cetera. There are usually 8 to 10 families, 10 to 12 children involved in these. So those, the bottom of page 4, the top of page 5, gives a whole lot of information about the kinds of things that we do. We also have an early learning specialist and a parent resource specialist that visit the playgroup once a month. So they provide some additional information for parents about learning strategies for kids, as well as parenting resources that they can take advantage of. We also do parenting and grandparenting workshops. So we held 8 in Granby this past year, and they're listed there, including one that's in Spanish. I love the fact that we're doing more in terms of grandparents, because we're finding there are increased numbers of grandparents or aunts or uncles or whatever that are raising kids because of various issues, and they have no real support group. So we're getting a good turnout of grandparents in these different things we're doing in different communities. And we also have an early childhood mental health. We have a mental health caseworker, she's a licensed social worker, and she provides early childhood mental health services to 4 children in Granby, as well as 4 different child care programs. So these are kids who are struggling with mental health issues, and also they provide support to the play groups or the early childhood providers who are working with those kids. Again, it's a jump up. If we can prevent issues in preschool, it really saves the district a lot of issues and time and even funding later on in terms of special education services. That's what we're really focused on. In special education, we have Heck Academy, which works with high school students who have behavioral issues. You had 1 last year, and you have 2 this year within the academy. And you also take part in occupational therapy, sensory integration, assistive technology, and you have a number of itinerant services that come to Granby to help with special education needs. Another good example of how a collaborative can provide services a district can't by itself. So speech and language, for example. You may need more capacity than you have, and we have a person who's itinerant come and help do that. Next piece is SPIFFY, our Strategic Partnerships for Family and Youth. It's a very interesting collaboration of 60 different community partners, really focused on substance abuse, on helping with kids develop assets to help them with learning. And we do, for example, a youth prevention needs assessment. Granby took part last year. I don't know, Cheryl, if the results have been shared yet or not with Granby?
Yes.
Okay.
Nurse Lee did that.
Good, yep. So you've seen that, and so tracked over time, so you kind of know what the trends are. Also helps Granby in terms of applying for grants and having background information for supporting some of your funding requirements. But it's really interesting to see the things change over time. As you know, one of the interesting things is alcohol use is going down and marijuana use is going up. And I think that's partly because the state has made some positions on that, whether you agree with them or not. There's certain things in the air that are maybe encouraging increased use, which is probably not a great thing. We have positive norms campaigns. We're part of Healthy Hampshire, which does a lot of work with food, hiking trails and so on. And we also showed the film Resilience last year, which some of you may have seen. I don't know if Granby went to that or not, but it's really about resilience of kids and about especially substance abuse. The next thing I want to talk about is after-school program. We're really excited about the Granby after-school program at West Street Elementary School. We, for a number of years, have held had programs that were funded by the state through federal funds. As you may know, reading news from Washington, Betty DeVos does not like after-school programs for whatever reason, and so they're talking about funding changes that come with that. Granby has a different kind of programs. Granby, basically, you guys establish your own program that we run, and parents pay a fee to be part of that. And so for us, it's kind of a model of kind of a new way of doing after school. We're really pleased with it. So I spent some time, and Marie helped me pull some of this together in terms of the SOAR, which is the name of the after-school, SOAR, not SORE, program. We have 20 students this year across 5 to first grades. We served 44 since it began. We run in 5 7 to 8 week sessions, and then every day is a different thing. So Monday is Lego Challenge. Tuesday is World Travelers, and I love this. They have different countries each session. They learn about the country. They eat food from the country. They have a passport that gets stamped. Kids really like this. It's a real way of expanding their horizons, and also, by the way, learn about world cultures. Wednesday's coding with Scratch, which I think helps prepare kids for coding, let's say may have in middle school and high school. And Thursday's HEAT, which is healthy eating and active time. It's a combination of learning about healthy eating, other kinds of food that's really healthy for you, as well as different kinds of activities. And Friday's a wild card. So all kinds of things going on. And at the very back of your packet, there's a one-pager that shows some examples of the activities in this after-school program. So the first one is a Lego, everyone see this? The Lego mural that families did. These are murals using Legos, and the students put them up. And I think the following session, they put the new ones up. It's a rotating thing, and they're really kind of cool murals. The healthy eating is the next picture down there, and the last one is the Minecraft Club, which I believe happened on Fridays. But again, they're all really exciting activities for the kids, and both help the kids have enrichment activities and also help build kind of social skills and a sense of camaraderie among the kids across grade levels. So again, we're really pleased with that. On the last page, page 7, describes some of the professional development that we do as part of this. So our after-school program is pretty active in, I think, 12 different schools, and we do a lot of PD with both the teachers and the program director. So this gives you an idea about that kind of training, especially around community service learning. This description of it, which again I think is pretty intensive and helpful for the whole program as well as your staff. So it's a kind of a win-win in that case. So those are things that we're doing right now. Any questions about those?
Yeah, I just have one.
Yeah, please.
Just found it kind of odd that, maybe you don't know, but the numbers every other year are high on the numbers of kids. If there was any reason why that might be?
Because the first year was the first year. The first 16 was the first year we did it. Is that what you're asking?
Oh, no, it's like, the first year, like the K, there's 5, and then the next, in the first grade, there's 2.
Yeah.
And then the second grade, there's 6.
I
and
don't,
third grade,
I
there's
don't know
1.
that answer. I think
Okay,
it's just
it seems
who
kinda-
signs
kinda
up. I don't know. I actually don't know. Cheryl, do you have the
It's
same?
just who signs up.
Just who signs up, yeah.
But it also, our grade 2 this year is one of our largest grades.
Okay.
So it's probably relative to the size of the grade level and families needing after-school care, so.
I
where
just
their
thought it was a
kids
strange
lie, yeah.
pattern, that's all.
Yeah.
Does anybody remember the surveys we did before we implemented this program and we wanted to see what the interest was? And does anybody remember what those numbers were as compared to what they actually are? I don't remember either. I was just curious how we were doing against the surveys.
Well, the program is definitely holding its own, so that's
Mhm.
a good thing, and it now can expand because we have a good solid base from it.
I would love to see it
Yeah,
expand.
we had a threshold. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah.
Good
So it is a
question.
threshold, for sure. Yeah. A couple of things that we do that are on this paper. We have a Title III consortium, which supports teachers supporting kids who are L English language learners. And Granby's part of that. You have some Ls. We will support that with tutoring and with training for your staff. We also do advocacy, so we can't go to the State House and petition for anything, but we can advocate and educate. So we see that an important role of the collaborative, especially because we represent in the Commonwealth the majority of the small and rural districts. So we've taken an advocacy role in terms of charter schools, in terms of small and rural district funding, in terms of having the government pay attention, state government pay attention to the real needs of our districts as we're losing student population competing with private schools, charter schools, et cetera. We do letters. I meet with legislators every year. I make the rounds of all our legislators. And we also do advocacy around things like the circuit breaker or transportation. I don't know if you have seen that the circuit breaker is supposed to be funded at 75%, and it's being threatened it's going to be at 65%, not 75%. And that will mean for Granby a loss of $65,000. So we advocate. Today, I was at a meeting of all the collaborative directors in the Commonwealth, and we're doing a joint letter to our legislators and the governor and so on about that, and about the impact on our districts of that reduction in circuit breaker. We also are talking about the fair share tax, and we collectively are going to write and petition in support of that. And you probably know we have a Facebook page that highlights a lot of things that our districts do. A statewide level, I'm the Western Mass representative for the collaboratives. I'm serving the Safe and Supportive Schools Commission on behalf of the collaborative. And as a consequence, we've done statewide and regional meetings around safe and supportive schools that have taken part in. And we actually have a regional meeting for DESE around special education. We do that as well this coming Friday, that I believe Carol is going to, I think. Yeah. A couple of new things I'll mention, then I'll stop. We have a trainer who's been trained by DESE in a process called Planning for Success, which helps districts with strategic planning. We've expanded our special education services. We have two terrific special education professionals who just do professional development for districts. We do it for paraprofessionals, number of areas. We do transition planning. We do inclusion practices, workshops for teachers, et cetera. We also work a lot with the ETLs. We're also talking about different innovations as well, perhaps sharing staff across districts, doing other kinds of enhancements of a website and so on. So we're doing an awful lot in that area as well, and we're always interested in getting ideas about things we can do to support your efforts and other district efforts as well. Again, there are things we can do collectively that we can't do as well individually. So let me end there by seeing if there are questions, first of all, and secondly, if there are ideas for other things we might consider.
I have a quick comment question. There are reasons why all these districts are members of the collaborative, and obviously many of them are there because they know that the collaborative is able to leverage the numbers and offer certain services that they may not be able to get on their own, as you said earlier. I don't know if we ever talked about it this way, but is there any way the collaborative actually tells its members, hey, you know, we're providing all these services, and just like you listed here, you took all these services from us, and if you had gone out and done this on your own, you would have spent this much, and now you save this much by being a member.
That's a good idea.
Showing the value of membership in the collaborative.
That's a really good idea. We haven't put a dollar figure next to those things. That's a really good idea. Because we know it's true that happens, so we're obligated by state law to prove that we're cost effective. So we do that, but we don't translate it then for the districts. It's a very good idea. Thank you.
Yeah, and there's a selfish reason why I'm asking that question as well, because we're always talking about finding ways to mitigate costs, sharing services, this and that, and this is one of those. Regardless how we look at it, this is one way where we go out and find a quality set of services for a much better price. And it would be great to be able to share that with folks in our town as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great idea.
It's actually very funny because I was thinking the same thing, and it wasn't until today when I got this that I was actually able to get some numbers behind some of the programs that we're taking part in. And is it worth the money we pay into it?
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
So it's a very similar question I was having the last couple of days.
Yeah, we'll do that. That's a great idea. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions or ideas? Well, let me end then by saying I really appreciate your time, and all of this happens not because of me, but because I have a terrific staff, really dedicated, hardworking, smart, able folks. And we all, the very first goal of our 5-year strategic plan is to serve our member districts. So you have ideas about how our staff can be deployed or how we can do other services, please let me know and we'll be glad to entertain and try to do whatever we can. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for coming. Really appreciate your time.
You want to keep it?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
I think I packed my agenda too somewhere. There we go. Thank you, Bill. The next item is, I believe, a reminder, right?
Yes.
I think I sent a message out, but this is a good reminder that next week, next Tuesday, we have a joint meeting with the Select Board and Finance Committee. I first thought that this was potentially a separate meeting because it was on Tuesday, then I realized that Monday is a holiday, so there is no meeting. So it seems like it will again be part of the Select Board meeting, and I don't know how much time they're gonna be carving out, but this is gonna be a good opportunity for us to have that conversation that we've been looking to have for a while.
What time does it start?
Our segment starts at 6:45, I think.
I'm not sure, I will verify.
Yeah, I'll find it. I know, you may not be there,
Yeah, I can't make it, and so,
I mean, for the start, right? You will
Yeah.
be there, yeah.
I mean, the earliest I can get there is probably 7:05.
Let me confirm what I sent to you guys.
This is structured within their meeting, it's not like the
Yeah.
last time we had the joint where we went, afterward, we stayed later.
Honestly, we did not
It's not our
receive,
budget.
yeah,
Here,
it's not
it's not our
like
budget
the
meeting.
budget meeting. This is
Okay.
what we, asked for to be able to get at least some responses, to our request. And at this point, eventually, we know that we will be going for a special town meeting, and we wanted to at least have this conversation before the select board had, their discussion and then decision to go to that special town meeting. It is 6:45.
At the senior center, correct?
At the senior center, thank you, yes, yep. Any questions on that? Okay. Now going to the old business, would you like to flip and then do second and third, then we go to superintendent's evaluation?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, the strategic plan, do you wanna speak to the meeting, or?
Well, you can, I don't mind speaking to it. It was, again, another great meeting. There was a draft idea for strategies in front of 4 groups. Now, they sat down and based on the questions that Cheryl provided, they kind of refined it to now look more like a set of strategies or goals and objectives. It was a combination of it, but it was still good. And at the end of the evening, we all heard the speakers share their group's output. We are, I think, at a pretty good place. I really appreciate that we're not rushing this to just say, you know, we're gonna be done tonight and that's it, whatever you come up with is what it is. It's a very thoughtful process, and because, you know, the process allows that thoughtfulness, a lot of good ideas are coming up. I was a free floater at this meeting. I came a few minutes late, and then, you know, the group had started. So, you know, Cheryl said, why don't you just float from table to table? It was great because I was able to hear a lot of different ideas based on different strategies that they were talking about. But also it was interesting to see, which was one of the themes that came up at the end of the evening, and I was telling Cheryl as I was walking from table to table that the themes were diverging. Even though it wasn't really something that was specific to the strategy that they were talking about, folks were talking about community. They were talking about the whole student. They were talking about really addressing the needs of the entire community, from families to providing adult education. And it didn't really matter what table I was going to, and they were able to frame it in a way that was relevant to their particular strategy at the end of the evening. It's not like we walked away with one set of ideas. So that was great. I don't know if
Yeah.
you have other
Yeah,
things. to
well,
add.
and I think, going back a few meetings prior, having really put some time and effort into the mission and the vision statement and getting that back to them so that you can really see the mission and vision driving each one of the strategies. So, kudos to the team. They are taking their time. They're having lots of great discussion. And I appreciate the time that they're giving because it has been a lot of meetings, but at the end, it's gonna be a really strong plan to move the district, so it's exciting.
When's the next meeting?
24th,
31st.
31st.
Is that a Wednesday?
They are Wednesdays typically.
Is that something that you can just drop in on?
Yeah.
And what time do they start?
6:30?
This time we're gonna switch to 6. Remember?
6.
Yeah.
That's right,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's here?
Yes.
It is here. So the other thing is, at the end of the evening, everybody was standing and the presenters were going through what their group came up with, and I think we had 15 participants, and a few additional members who actually do show up. They could not. I mean, the weather's like this. Dave
Yeah.
DeRocher, for instance,
Right.
wasn't here because
Yeah.
we were expecting a
The
storm
fire
the
chief,
following
same thing.
following
Mhm.
day. Fire chief the same way. So we have a larger crowd, and I was thinking, we had a great experience last time we did this a few years ago, but the numbers started going down eventually, and you could see that there is still an excitement in the room that everybody wants to be part of it, and they are having a great conversation, and the opportunity for them to be able to swap, so they're not really married to one strategy. They just they switch if they want to.
Mhm.
I think that helped a lot as well. So thank you for that. That was very well run.
Good, thank you.
I think gotta start getting some action items.
Yeah,
and
so
then
the
start
next
making
step will
progress.
be, so at the last meeting, we wrote strategy statements. So the meeting before, we had done a lot of brainstorming about strategies and sort of buckets that our ideas were falling into. And the last meeting, they wrote actual strategy statements and answered the question, why was this important? What issue was it resolving that we felt in the district needed to be resolved? And can we communicate it very clearly? Because we can have the best strategies in the world, but if you can't communicate it, beyond what all of the work we're doing. So they spent time doing that. So the next is, I'll take that and make a one sheet, which we would be able to share with everyone in the community. But then having each of the groups develop the action plans that go with each of the strategies. So, and then seeing how that all converges and comes together in one document. So, yeah, it's exciting. It's yeah.
I can't wait to see it.
Oh, it's really fun. Yeah.
Cool. I'm gonna talk budget now, Mark.
Okay.
Is that all we had?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, we're doing this at the early meeting instead of the latter meeting because I won't be at the latter meeting. So, attached in your packet is the results of operations through December. We've expended $3.48 million out of an $8.55 million budget, or 40.7% of the budget year to date. And to compare that to last year at this time, we had expended 43% of the budget to date. So we're actually a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of spending. At this point, for the most part, the budget so far is tracking according to plan. We do have the expenditure requests for supplemental monies out to the town. And there are some adjustments we have to make to the budget now that we have it entered. There's a couple adjustments we need to make in terms of where the copiers are charged and a couple of the salary lines where we have the nurses that are lumped in one. But for the most part, the budget is set in terms of being broken out for the individual lines that need the expenditures. And let's see, what else can I tell you about the budget? I can tell you do you have any questions?
Other than the unanticipated, how are we doing? Are we expecting anything that may cause a gap on this budget? For instance, Bill mentioned that there is this risk of circuit breaker going from 75 to 65.
Yep.
Where
That
are
just
we
happened
in
last
terms
week.
of?
Right.
It already happened?
No, the conversation
Okay, okay.
became very clear last week that our role is to advocate for the full reimbursement at 75%.
Yeah.
So that's something I think school committee can pick up the phone and call legislators. I'm going to have Carol and Mark tomorrow, myself, write a memo for you all with talking
Is there
points.
a link to sending something? I would.
Yep,
I
and
mean,
then my thought would be to have Carol here at the next meeting, to go through, a statement like we made on charter schools, to our reps. But in the interim, you can call, and I'll give you the talking points around that. But he is correct, it would cost, Granby about $65,000, that 10% reduction in circuit breaker reimbursement.
Now, is this something that we can send a link to parents? Because that is just so easy. You know, when I get those for,
I don't see why we cannot post it on our Facebook page
Right.
and all that, and,
Mhm.
yeah.
well, that's different than sending out an email explaining the situation, right? And then, and attaching a link to say, you know, this is how you can contact your
Yeah.
representative.
If this was about my personal opinion, I would immediately say yes, because I think we all see our role to be one of advocacy, and, you know, we talk to the legislature and we inform the community. Let's find out whether or not it's, you know, it's okay.
Jeff, because I know as teachers, we are not allowed
Right.
to tell people how to
Right.
vote.
Yep.
We can express our opinion and let people know what we think.
Well, we wouldn't
But
be
when
saying,
that's- Right.
we
Well,
wouldn't
right,
be.
that's not
s-
This isn't about voting, it's about whether they wanna talk to their
Right,
legislator.
and this is just giving facts,
I would,
giving
I
the
still,
facts, and then.
you don't want to break those lines, I still would check,
Yeah,
Mhm.
we would
Yeah,
check and then,
absolutely.
yeah,
yeah.
that's a good.
What I'm suggesting, and the way that we formulate it, is just giving straight facts and letting people make their own judgments, and oh, by the way, if you happen to agree that you don't wanna lose 65,000 in the district, here's a link that you can contact your representative. I mean, it's,
Yeah, or even just say, here's the information, feel free to
Exactly.
contact your rep.
exactly.
Yeah.
I think that we need to make that more easily accessible
Yeah,
to
we
parents.
can do that for our own elected officials, and well, let's first check, and then I don't see any problem. But as far as our contacts, I would like to go beyond our own elected officials and go to the education committees on both sides, the Senate and the House, talk to whoever seems to be influential at this point in time, because this whole thing is ridiculous right now. You know, we're having this conversation about tax breaks and, you know, how much money everyone's gonna save, but we're forgetting that there is a cost to it on the other side. And for communities like ours, where we're already struggling, you know, these seemingly little cuts, 65,000 is a huge amount of money. Put it on top of the unanticipated expenses that we're talking about, that's gonna be huge. And then we're gonna hear the same thing. So, since we're talking about this, I had gotten out of all the Facebook groups and all that, and because there's no way to follow it, and sometimes it just gets to the point where not only you can follow it, but you see really isolated pieces, and it may it causes some angst, to say the least. But I then realized, thanks to folks who are following them, like my wife and others, that there is a lot of conversation that is happening on those social media pages, whether it's Facebook or less so on Twitter, not necessarily related to Granby, but broader issues. if you're not there, you don't know what's being discussed. And I realize that for Granby, we're back again talking about how much schools are spending. We have to start looking at the town's finances, starting with our school budgets. Think about it. It's not even been a year yet. We had these extensive conversations explaining that we are spending one of the least amount of money per student. We have one of the budgets that is basically the minimum plus a certain amount. That's why we keep on going to the town. And each time there is a conversation around finances, it just comes back to schools. So we now add on top of that all these conversations around tax cuts and circuit break cuts and whatever else may come from the state side, because they don't even know the impact of these tax cuts on state finances. Well, next year we're not going to have an easy conversation. And when it's so easy for folks to jump on this bandwagon and say, you know what, things are not going to happen and they're not happening, a simple thing that, Bill quickly mentioned, which is the fair tax thing, just, there is now an opposition growing because, nobody wants to pay a little extra. It's not even, it's not even going to affect a lot of people, but it's, to make sure that a little more is collected as taxes so it can be spent on education and transportation. Hopefully we can get to the point where we create some additional revenue sources. Otherwise, this thing is going to go out of control. And not anytime, 2 years, 3 years down the line when what was the conversation we were having last year, it's going to go out of control starting this year. If we do not really get to a point where we can have these conversations. So, long story short, I just got back on one of the larger ones. What is it, Granby Town Meeting? I got on that one.
That's
So that,
the one you should post it on.
right, so I'm just going to start posting these things because we are living at a time of misinformation and disinformation, sometimes willingly, sometimes unwillingly, but nonetheless, by the time we get to the budget conversations, a lot of folks will have formed their opinions based on the wrong information that they've been hearing in all these places. So we have to really do a lot more work, unfortunately, to share whatever we know with folks in our town. And if we can get to the next level and reach out to our elected officials, to folks in Boston who may not even know where Granby is, even better. I mean, it's that's what we need to start doing. Because going to the great day on the hill one day was good, but probably those folks don't remember who were either anyway. So
And when you post it on the Granby Town Meeting,
yes,
you could also include the link.
yes,
And there are a lot of people who read that Granby Town Meeting.
actually that's a great idea because I don't have to post as an official or anybody. I'm just a member as a town resident. So
And then
yeah,
you
and
could
anybody
put-
can do it.
And you could put the link
Yeah.
there too.
Right. That's a great idea. Thank you for that. Yeah. Lunch.
Lunch, yes. So the results don't come out until tomorrow because we're at the early meeting. So I will send that to the group when they come out. I do want to let you know that Andrew Stratton is leaving us for leading Chartwell's for greener pastures, I guess. So I've been talking with the food service director, his boss, and they have some candidates who they're looking to make a hire soon. So we're going to have a conversation on Thursday about who this final candidate is, and looking at how he's going to be re-looking at expenses in terms of this person and how he provides the services that Andrew does. So I can share that information with you once we have that conversation, but I kind of wanted to give you that heads up because
No, thank you.
I had asked him from the last meeting if he could be at this one, but he couldn't. So
Again, there are a lot of things happening that sometimes takes my brain in the wrong direction, and I get frustrated with a lot of things. And I was thinking that lunch, for instance, we've been having these conversations year after year, the same conversation, and then this weekend, as I was thinking about these things, I thought, you know what? at work, we use these examples of, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting that there will be some different outcome, right? We have to start thinking differently. I mean, I can completely appreciate that there may not be something to be done based on our current structure and current relationships and connections, whatever they may be. We have to start thinking a lot more differently to see where we can get with this. And lunch is one example, but it is getting frustrating because we're talking about a few $1,000s here, $65,000 there, and $170,000 on the other one. It just adds up.
I also don't think that a new hire should impact their ability to come out and make their quarterly presentation. That's not, I mean, I'm gonna say it in the nicest possible way, but that's not our issue.
Right.
So I think if they need to bring in his boss or whatever, I mean, my expectation is that we're due. We're due for a presentation, and
I can talk to them on Thursday about coming to the second meeting of this month.
especially with the numbers being available, there's no reason for them to make somebody available to come, make the presentation, answer our questions.
Yeah.
So
what's our alternative?
that's my expectation.
Well, we don't know.
I mean, maybe it's time to start thinking what the
Yeah,
alternatives
I
might
mean,
be.
we had some conversations around the alternatives. We know that this town had a different model, I don't know, less than 10 years ago. But, we were first trying to see whether or not we could mitigate some of these problems by looking at the way we are providing lunch, the menus, where we're buying, how we're storing, and all that. But there is, and it may be the case everywhere, I mean, but doesn't change the fact that we have the right to really question some of these things because they seem to be the questions to ask. But, at the very beginning of the year, we had this loss, which was immediately a deficit for us, right? So there's really, and this is not the first time, by the way, we lost something. So I don't know how to get on top of these things. That's why I asked, and I was actually very serious when I asked whether there's any insurance or anything for this kind of stuff. But there has to be a better way to manage all these services. Eventually, I start thinking that the customer is being taken for granted because no matter what we do, we're not able to influence the service that we're receiving. And it's for the lunch service, it's for any service that you're getting, your cable service, your phone service, whatever it is. But gradually, you start getting the feeling that yeah, okay, we're just we're doing something, we're thinking about it, but we're not gonna really be able to change much. And again, take an example. In Newton, it may not be a huge deal that they are $10,000 in the hole. $10,000 for us is a huge deal, and every year thinking that we are $10,000, we're trying to remain within $10,000, which is another ridiculous concept too. But we gave up our idea of not being in the black or breaking even though we're in the red. We're trying to keep it within the $10,000 buffer that we have. Even that is a ridiculous concept. That's $10,000 that can be spent somewhere else in this district. So anyway, they heard it from us, we heard it from them. This is basically a redundant rant, but we have to start thinking much more concretely about what we can do about lunch services. Your question is basically the starting point. What are the alternatives for us?
Well, I think that's, most of that is because Deanne has been saying since I joined the committee, are they managing to that overage?
Yeah.
Right? Is that not what you've said a few times?
Yeah, absolutely. So, that's the lunch part.
That's pretty much what I have right now.
One last question. We had that initial 3-item unanticipated amount.
Mhm.
And then I think we said something like it went up a little bit.
Yes, there's a memo that I sent to Mr. Martin. It's entitled Unanticipated Expenses for 2017-18, and it's in your shared folder, and it outlines $97,137.45 for a tuition, a new tuition. $33,108, which is combined tuition and transportation for a vocational student that moved into the district. $49,163 for the new second grade teacher that was the result of 7 students moving into grade 2 who moved into Granby. Their families moved into Granby, so second grade just bursted at the seams. And then the last one, we are required to provide transitional services for special education students who are 18 to 22 years old. And so we track that, and this was a need for a student to begin that process and to develop some independent skills. And so that contract is for $19,800. And so that's the 4th.
That memo there, can I borrow that for
Sure.
1 second?
Yeah.
I'm in something else,
Yeah.
so. You have on the 3rd paragraph, as you are aware, the school department originally submitted these requests to the finance committee for consideration. I think when we show up to this committee's meeting, it's important for us to have the date of,
Sure.
that original documentation. And I also think that we need to have the larger conversation about, what are the expectations of, working collaboratively with the finance committee, with the select board, in, for example, sending out a memo, not hearing anything back. We need to have this uncomfortable conversation at this meeting. Speaking to what you just said about doing the same thing and expecting a different result, we have to go there. And I understand that it's gonna be on camera and, it might not start off well, right? But we have to have the conversation.
No, that's absolutely true. Okay. All right, any other questions on the budget? Okay, when are we starting our FY19?
We've started it with the leadership team.
Okay.
You did the capital side of that already, and so our timeline, we are on our timeline, so we would be presenting to you, I believe, in February. But we can certainly have the conversation about areas that the committee wants to focus on, whether that might be social emotional, continuing that development of our program, curriculum, instruction. Happy to have that conversation about the direction that the school committee would like the leadership team to focus on in developing the budget.
I think, especially given the financial situation out there, which is not under our control, it would be better, in my opinion, to start the conversation sooner than later. I know that we have a timeline, but the sooner we can get into some of these things, the sooner we can start throwing out some ideas and maybe start differently. I don't know if we did this last year, but I remember that we did it once. It might have been the year before that. If there is a need to have a larger meeting that includes the administrative team, to hear directly, what everyone is thinking, so that we can start balancing it in our minds and see how we may be able to contribute to that process. That would be helpful too.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
All right, now going to the superintendent's evaluation. in the folder, but some of the individual evaluations were already posted there. I did not post the aggregation or mine, which I will do after this meeting, so that, to give some suspense to the conversation. I'm kidding. So I will start with a question, which is not related to the evaluation, but the process itself. This is the third or fourth time that at least I'm doing it this way, this new summative evaluation. This is a fairly cumbersome process
Say the least.
that does not necessarily have a lot of value to it, because it really boxes you to areas, and you may want to say a lot of different stuff. I mean, if I was, writing these things freely, I could have just, written a couple of pages. Probably it would have been much quicker, much easier, much more personal and beneficial. And I tried to keep it that way too, and I'm glad that everybody else, was looking at it that way. So if we are not bound by this for the coming years, we may try to find an alternative way to make this easy on everyone. I'm not a huge fan of end of year, end of cycle evaluations. I find them regressive because you tell someone, hey, you know what, these were fine, but here are some opportunities. Sometimes you don't even get to the opportunities in a constructive way, so you omit them from the conversation. So it beats the whole purpose, as opposed to having these conversations throughout the year to say, hey, where are we, what are we doing, how are we doing, and how can we change course if we have to. So it was in some of your comments as well, Mike, that I will touch upon. So I just wanted to mention that before we started our conversation.
I just want to say this is one of the hardest ones I've ever had to do.
Yeah.
And I've had to do plenty.
Yeah. This is difficult. This is difficult because we're all sitting here and looking at what is happening in the district from our own glasses, our own perspectives, and we see different things, and it's great to have those perspectives from different lenses and ideas, thoughts, and this doesn't allow that. But again, probably this is the closest we would get to having a variety of ideas and thoughts shared. So hopefully it is helpful at the end of the day. So just to start and set the timeline, there are a few things where I start thinking about them. I just don't know when we started doing certain things. So in this context, it was a good thing because I did not know how long you've been here. I had to think. I said,
I know, I had a hard time too.
when did she come in? When did she join us? And it was for a good reason, because as I started thinking about this stuff, it seemed to me that we've been having we had you in the district, first of all, for a long time, and we've been having these conversations for a long time, and there was a nice list of things to share, on the accomplishment side, on things that we're still working on, and so it was great to really, at least for a moment, to lose touch with the timeline, because there are a lot of great things happening in the district. So you joined us in summer 2016. So your work in the district as a superintendent started then, but actively in September 2016 when the school year started. So we have about a full school year and a half under your belt, and there are quite a few things to talk about. I will sidestep all these things that we would like to share with you, and I would like to make this a conversation. Sure. So I'm trying to get to the point where we can be a little more casual than just a formal delivery of your evaluation, and invite everybody else in the conversation so they can share their thoughts with you as well. But what I will start with is something that a few of these school committee members also shared with me as I was putting it together. And that is the fact that we have a relationship between the school committee and our superintendent that allows us to have any type of conversation anytime. And seems like both parties, as they deliver, they have no concerns that there will be some issues with it, but also both parties are looking for some feedback. We're kind of bouncing off ideas off of each other. And I think that is a great quality of any institution that is functional, that is that is transparent, that is trusting. So I'll start with that, and I will thank you for allowing our committee the last year and a half to have that type of conversation. And when I say our committee, obviously I'm including everyone, but you created that environment where we could have these conversations, and almost always focusing on continuous improvement. How can we do have our frustrations and our rants, and we talk about when and how things don't work out the way we expect them, which is good. We learn our lessons, but we almost always turn around and focus on continuous improvement opportunities. And I think again that's a great asset for any organization to have, and we're happy to have that here.
Can I just add one?
Yeah, absolutely.
I never question your intentions. That, that you're here for the kids. So that, I feel really good about that. Having any conversation, I know that at the center of it, at the end of whatever decision you come to or that we come to together, that the kids are, that's the first priority. And that's the way it's supposed to be.
Right. Right, and that's actually the next thing that I have in my intro, that we started talking. We did have this concept in our conversations before, but we have the concept of the whole child ingrained in our brains now as we're talking about things. So we don't just see what we're trying to do as merely educational support of our students. We're thinking that we are trying to do our best to support our students, in fact everyone in our community, but primarily our students, in a variety of ways. Again, social emotional learning was a conversation that we started having a little while ago, but now it's real, and we're focusing on it, and it's becoming a lot more concrete as to what it is, what it can do for not only students that we thought were in need of social emotional learning. And to be very honest, we're having that conversation during this strategic planning meeting, and I told them that, hey, until this year, even I thought that social emotional learning primarily aligned with special education. I did not really think of it as a full thing that can benefit every single child in our district, and I learned to look at it that way. So that is again an asset for our school district, that we are focusing on the student, as you said, Deanne. So overall, we see that we are laying the foundations for the future. You clearly demonstrated your leadership qualities during this past year and a half, even though this is for the first school year that you were here. I think a lot of us had the entire duration that you were here with us in mind when we wrote our thoughts in this evaluation. This idea that we have to align with a vision that is bigger than what we're able to see right now, and really strive to achieve the objectives that will get us to that vision. I think that is appreciated, and you always remind us of that. And as a result, as Deanne said, every member of the committee said that they were confident that we have the superintendent who will bring our district into the future and towards that vision. So thank you for that. So I will wrap the intro part before we get into the details, saying that your overall rating for 2016-2017 was proficient. Everyone made a point of saying that we'll look forward to continuing working with you. And as a side note, this again, one of the frustrating things that we're looking at a rubric. Look at the matrix and, does this check, does this not check? So we try to go beyond that. But several items that are on the exemplary side, they focus on proficient plus a repetition of the behaviors and activities and actions that are seen in that proficient column, and asks whether or not we're modeling those behaviors. So I think in all of our minds, we think that through time, we are really destined to go in a direction of exemplary for quite a few of those areas that we're looking at. So I wanted to mention that because, obviously, there were a lot of items here that I personally struggled because the definition descriptions are so narrow and unclear, but wanted to mention that to you. So you had three goals, three areas where you had goals. One of them, I don't know whether it was omitted, deleted. We did not have a clear goal, the student learning one. So we kind of went based on what we know and what we witnessed, what we observed on our own. But quickly to go through that, we believe that you met the objectives that we set out to do, you set out to do, especially for that first school year, given that it was a fairly fast-paced in all aspects of the work that you were doing, from getting acclimated in the district, focusing on learning about the town and our district, meeting people within the school district and outside who you like to really focus on, the members of the community. So it was really fast-paced, and we bumped into the budget season. Probably it was a huge shock for you, but I know that in the past you had similar experiences in the districts, at least some of the districts that you were in. So this was a real thing that hit you in your first few months. There were a couple of areas where the committee members marked significant improvement, and I think there were a couple of areas where significant progress, thank you, and needs improvement. They were far fewer than proficient and exemplary ones that are marked. So I just want to go through a few things. I don't want to really hog the whole time, and I don't want to really extend this time unnecessarily. So please feel free to jump in as I focus on some of these things. So I will go standard by standard. We have 4 standards, so I will just give you some ideas about what the committee members were thinking for each one of these standards and your performance with respect to these standards. The first one is instructional leadership. In this area, it came through that the school committee has a lot of confidence in your ability to focus on curriculum based on your past experience, but what also we were able to observe as you were here, through the conversations that we had, through the evidence that you provided. We also are really appreciative that the administrative team is a close-knit team that is coming together regularly to discuss specific items with the specific intent of making improvements and solving problems. And we're also thankful that you are bringing all those conversations to our meetings so that we are up to date with what issues are being discussed and resolved, or if they are not, what we can do about those. So we appreciate that. We talked about data and data-driven decision-making. Again, you know, some of us, including me, we have our own pet peeves on this one. Data, yeah, well, maybe a little bit on this side as well, because we work with a lot of data, and data are great, but at the end of the day, you know, what do we do with that? How do we analyze it and shape it in such a way that will drive our efforts? So we completely agree that we did focus on data and data-driven decisions and actions. We think that we may have an opportunity to create the metrics that may be easier for us to really digest, and then based on those, see where we are and what progress we're making, and then where we're going, so that we can have the conversations in a more focused and succinct way. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the focus on every student, every classroom, every day. I think it's another thing that we almost expect to hear whenever we get a phone call from the school district. And sometimes we're saying, just come on, you know, tell us, is it, are the school closed, whatever it is, but, you know, but that is actually, that allowed all of us to really shift our focus and kind of calm down, because we were hoping that we were going to get to the point where we were going to focus on some of these things, and we did not always have the opportunity to do that because there were a lot of things going on, but not everybody is able to really keep focus on some of these critical items, and we believe that this is absolutely critical. So we started focusing on things related to social emotional learning, the physical, social, mental well-being of our students. You know, you mentioned a lot of things that were accomplished around the Peace Builder program, which was initiated before you came in, but now it's being implemented in our high school. It's going to be implemented this year in elementary. Is that elementary implemented?
Across the board, it's
Implemented? Okay,
Yep.
so we're all good. The other thing that we were able to do during the last year is really go beyond what we would think to be the core path or standard-based path, but start thinking about what else we can do for our students. Even during the strategic planning meetings, we were thinking whether or not we really had to stick with pure math, pure science, pure you know, English, but we talked about whether there is a way for us to provide that type of education to the students in a way that provokes their thoughts, makes them more engaged in their classes, and I think the district is on a good path to be able to do that. I will add a personal note on that, and that is we are really challenged at a time where we're trying to differentiate ourselves, and I think that word came up on a couple of occasions. For instance, the social emotional learning, how we focus on it is a potential differentiator for us. How we offer some of these classes that may not be available in the same way in other districts could be a differentiator for us. All that said, the thoughtfulness beyond it, because sometimes we can get impatient, and you know, we are sharing things of this nature with you that, hey, you know, let's go ahead and do it. We also appreciate the thoughtfulness that is put behind all these decisions, and that we are really focusing on the destination, but making sure that we're getting there in the right way. Going to the second, any other additions from anyone? Going to the second standard, management and operations. This one includes environment, human resource management, scheduling and management, information systems, law, ethics and policies, fiscal systems. So on this one, I'm going to read this top one, so that, because it's almost verbatim from one of the comments. Superintendent Stanton's core professional values, integrity, trust, optimism, and belief in realizing the potential in all students are consistently shown in not only in her vision for our district, but also in her daily decision-making skills. And I think this is something that we all share. It was really clear, and this is something that, again, we initiated before you came in, but it became very clear that the safety and well-being of our students was going to be the focus. They are the reason we're here. We're all here, and their safety is paramount for us. So we were able to really bring that district emergency operation plan to the next step, where we now started seeing the fruits of it. There have been a lot of drills on a couple of occasions. We saw how they worked, how students were kept at bay when certain things were happening. They were kept safe, but also away from the unnecessary visibility into some action. So we really appreciate that. One thing that I wanted to add is that it may not be as obvious to folks who are watching, or even to us sometimes, and this is an area that you really put a lot of focus on, and I think we all appreciate that very much, is the focus on celebrating our successes, things that we do well, especially for a small district like ours, but also recognizing work well done at all levels, whether it's students or our educators or administrators, even reaching out to families when they do great things and mentioning them in our notes and messages. That is much appreciated. With that, one thing that wasn't in your notes that I remembered from our conversations was the fact that Granby's emergency operations plan was showcased at the last Massachusetts Association of Superintendents and Massachusetts Association of School Committees meeting in November 2017. So again, it was great that among all those presentations, Granby happened to be one where we shared something that we all care about. For our hiring practices, again, something that was put in motion but now implemented and utilized in a better way with some remaining opportunities around it. But we centralized and standardized the way we are hiring personnel into our district. It's allowing us to leverage a larger pool of qualified applicants, and that includes our substitute teachers. We also know that there are some other systems related to our operations and our finances that are unfortunately on hold. Some of them are due to reasons beyond our control at this point, but we are making a great effort to leverage systems and automation to see whether or not we can do things in a faster way, in a better way, but also in a cost-effective way. So that is appreciated as well. And finally, in this area related to our budget process, we have a schedule for our budget process that we hope everyone will be following. Just like the conversation we had earlier, we are very comfortable and confident that when the administrative team meets, their input into the budgetary priorities will inform our conversations when it gets to us, and then our decisions eventually around our budget. But we also know that we are focusing on being as cost efficient as possible, keeping educational objectives and priorities in mind and not really sacrificing from those. You participated in quite a few meetings, I know, last year, and we were at a couple of them together where the foundation budget changes were discussed, or the state funding process was discussed. So I think our visibility in those types of meetings and understanding these issues firsthand and being able to bring it to the district. And when we speak to our town residents, being able to speak to those issues and changes firsthand, it makes a lot of difference. Anything on Standard 2 that anyone wanted to add? Okay. The third standard is related to family and community engagement. I'm assuming that there will be a lot of other inputs on this one. Because this is something that we talked about a lot throughout the last year and a half. First of all, this is a repetition of what I started with. Your ability and your commitment to conduct all of these interactions in a transparent way, really creating that trustful connection with folks that you are working with, including the school committee, but also reaching out to the community, town officials, families, our educators, our staff. I think that is making a lot of difference. We keep on talking about culture change, and as I'm spending my days on conversations related to culture change, I always mention that culture change is a slow process. It pays huge dividends, but it's a very slow process. It doesn't happen overnight. We were able to see some of those changes taking hold in our district during the last year and a half, and we appreciate that. Your communication style is really allowing folks to be able to reach out to you. I think we're not any exception to that. But also your ability to listen, which is, at least personally, is a huge deal. And really listen.
So my mother.
That's good. We appreciate her too then. So that allowed us to raise a lot of issues that we probably otherwise could not have raised as openly and as candidly. Even though we always want to, we may have beaten around the bushes to get to that same point. We did not really have to do that. So I mentioned that you made a concerted effort to engage families and students in a lot of activities, meetings related to decision making, related to things that we are doing in the district. One of them is something that we just talked about, the strategic planning process. One thing that I personally appreciated, I know that everybody spoke about it earlier in our previous meetings, the fact that students are truly a partner in all these conversations now. And it's not just you, but the administrative team really not seeing any difference between what they are hearing from other stakeholders and the students, and they take them as seriously and try to incorporate them in their decision. I think it is a huge plus for any district, and I'm glad that we are one of those. Because I know, as we heard from our student rep, Annabal's biggest pet peeve is that some districts don't even have student reps. They don't have students going to these regional state meetings. They're not even able to approach their administrative teams or school committees. So thank you for making it a lot easier for all of our students. And some of them who are at our strategic planning meetings, the comfort that they feel in sharing their opinions, I think that is a huge gain for us, because they're going to be able to do the same thing wherever they go in the future. So thank you for making that possible. Your entry plan was great. It took us a while to get to it, and a part of that delay was because we kept on pushing it. Part of it is because, at least on my part, a lack of understanding as to what was going to come out of it. But what came out of it, at least for me, I know that we share the same feedback with you, was really impressive. The ability to analyze what had happened in the district, what is happening in the district, and what the gaps are that we should be focusing on. It was really good to see that, and a good number of those things that you identified as gaps found their ways into our conversation in strategic plan meetings or our school committee meetings. So, talking about collaborating with folks who are outside our district, I think, again, your presence at events like Day on the Hill or going to other meetings where budget issues were discussed, the legislature, members of the legislature were present and asking questions and really getting to know them firsthand. Being able to have those conversations really with those elected officials in our district and knowing them on a first name basis, it is an important thing. It may not really seem that important, but it's an important thing because when the time comes to reach out to them, they don't hesitate to really pick up the phone and call you back, us back. But you really made a point of creating that connection. Both our state representative and state senator were already visitors in our district. Hopefully, we'll see them more often. And also, your connection with some other initiatives, such as the Massachusetts Rural Schools Coalition, your active participation in the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents, I think they help us have a broader visibility across the state. The last item here is something that we all felt very strongly and talked about almost every meeting. It's related to communication. I think you already came with the idea that communication was very important at all levels. And we have seen evidence of that, again, at various levels. The most important communication, I think you heard this from all of us, is the personal communication. And I hope what we were able to observe is giving us the impression that everyone is feeling comfortable enough to pick up the phone. They may not be happy with the conversation that they have all the time, but they are able to pick up the phone and reach out and know that they will be able to speak to someone. I remember a conversation that we had a while ago around the complaint about music in the on the fields, and that this individual was upset that you were on the line with speaking with somebody else, and then you could not respond to the call on the spot. But then you made a point of calling and calling back until you were able to personally engage this person in the conversation and explain firsthand what we were doing and what the rules were. I think those are the type of things that we expected to see in a community like ours, where a lot of folks really want to have that personal connection. But beyond that, I think we started seeing the fruits of some other investments that were made. There's a new website. Thank you for that. It is taking shape. It is much more functional than what we had before, because good luck finding anything on the previous one. At least here we can navigate and find information, and it is growing. It is Granby's website, Granby's page, where we can see our own students, we can see our own news, we can read about our own activities and actions. The parent portal is a huge initiative. At least based on what I'm hearing and personal experience, it's not fully functional to the extent that we would like, but it is a huge deal for families, parents, be able to go to a portal and find out about what's going on. At the very least, being able to track certain things. I can tell you from personal experience that I don't know any previous experience where we're able to really know that we were connected with our child's education in a way that we are right now. And I think it is setting an example, because we are also getting a lot of communication from our teachers as well. They are really trying to reach out and make sure that they are part of this new style of communication that we have in our district. We are using social media. We probably have some opportunities to think about it even more broadly and see how we can use it as an influencer. We have some press releases a lot more often going out to local newspapers. We tried in the past to use our public access channel, and being a member of the public access channel, I always really wanted to make that one of the strongest channels of communication that we had, but it did not really happen. To be very honest, we did not have anything. Now we have the superintendent's regular shows. We have other shows that are in the making. So that is a progress. And as I mentioned, we see many more faces at our meetings. It wasn't the case when we had the open house for our principals, principal candidates. But I know that a lot more folks are showing up to our meetings nowadays to see things firsthand. Anything from anyone else?
And I would just like to say that it's very nice to know that, like when parents call me, I can honestly tell them to call you, and I know that you'll talk to them. And that wasn't always the case, and it's a very nice thing to have someone who's accessible and easy to talk to, because parents are much more comfortable, and that's a very nice thing.
That's a great point. It is great to be able to say, when someone says, I called and nobody answered, to be able to say, please try again, you will get an answer, and if you don't, tell me, tell us, and we'll make sure that you have that connection, because there's no way you're not going to hear back from our school. So having that level of comfort is great. You mentioned the rule that the administrative team established to return any type of communication within 24 hours. And I know that it's not always 24 hours. It is less than that for things that are more urgent. But I think that is, that is showing respect to the community's concern. They call for a variety of reasons, but they want to be heard and they want to have that conversation. So it's great that they are hearing back from our superintendent and administrative team. The last standard is related to professional culture, and it includes commitment to high standards, cultural proficiency, again, communication, but this is your communication skills, continuous learning and the focus on that, existence of shared vision, and then ability to manage conflict. In this one, the school committee's feedback is that, first of all, the concept of having a renewed mission and vision for the district has been at the forefront. The strategic planning committee has the draft versions of those that will be shared with the school committee soon as well. That is really setting the tone as to what type of school district we want to see and what kind of school district we aspire to have in the future, and helping the effort to plan for the future. We're talking about cultural transformation, and it is a difficult process because it's not something that is tangible and it's not something that you see the fruits of immediately. So patience is needed, and we see that you are pursuing that with a lot of patience with the broader community within and outside our schools. There are a lot of meetings that are taking place in our school district regularly to connect with a variety of groups, from our administrative team to our union representatives, so that we know where we are at all times. I think that's the right way of doing things, as opposed to waiting until the very end of any process to find out what did not work, because then we have no great opportunity to fix those things. We started talking about the concept of feedback, and again, we brought that concept all the way down to the students level. And being able to receive feedback is a huge plus in my book anyway, but we are all happy that we are in a district where that type of feedback will not only allow folks to share whatever they think, but also allow us to identify the issues and then solve some problems around those. Let me see. The policies are on their way. again, we've been working on the policies. We started working on the policies before you came to the district. But oddly, and this is funny, I enjoy those policy meetings because I now see
Oddly.
because policies are, tough to read. You don't know who put them together. You can't understand what they're saying, why they even, we even have those policies. Now it is an
And yet-
easier,
and yet
more
it's vital.
productive.
You know,
Yes, it is
It's
vital.
Right.
Yeah.
Policies are vital to running the district.
Yep. So, and it's great to know that when folks go to our policies, when we approve those policies, we can rest assured that they're not going to laugh at what we call our policies, because we know that those are consistent with what districts across the state have and the Massachusetts Association of School Committees proposed. So focus on continuous learning. We know that professional development is a huge deal in our district. We are hearing about the topics because we are privy to some of the communications that are happening around those professional development days. We also were able to see feedback that you received and the administrative team received from some of the participants who really appreciated the content and the tone of the professional development days. We also know that it is always an opportunity, because things change. As things change, how do we really start changing the focus of those professional days and professional development opportunities to make sure that we are focusing on the right things that enrich the participants and allow them to really build on the skills that they would like to focus on. And the last thing that I have is something that, again, we mentioned before. We always try to have this connection with our town committees and town officials. And I know that at all times there were some connections. It seems to us, and hopefully it continues that way, whether we agree or disagree with them, the tone of our connections with the town officials, town administrator, town committees, those contacts are conducted in a cordial, respectful, and productive way. At least that is the intent when we go into those meetings. Again, we don't agree, and we will not always agree, but we know, and we heard from some of these committees when we were meeting with them, that they hoped to have similar opportunities and similar conversations with similar tone in the past, so that we could have made progress on some of these areas. People are people, so there's always some potential friction, but I'm saying this because of your ability to really tone things down and focus on what is important and have those conversations that way. And I will wrap it up with one thing that is not here, but in light of what I just said. One thing that the school committee has been talking about during the last so many years, since I've been on the committee, is the fact that we're not really an isolated committee of this town. We're not really, these bunch of people who are sitting here who show up once a year at a meeting and try to, ask for additional money or explain why we are spending so much money on education. We always aspire to show that we are an integral part of this community. Schools are the center of our community, as we always said. School committee works to represent the school district, the students, educators, staff in our school district. I think, again, regardless of whether we agree or disagree on some of these issues, I think we were able to make some progress in showing some segment of our population that we don't see ourselves as separate from the entire progress of our town and the future of our town. If there is a future that we're talking about in our town that we are all hopeful about, we see our schools to be part of that, to be at the center of that. And it was good to hear that some folks are understanding that, and we're hearing the same message back from them, that they are focusing on the schools as the center of our community. And I think some of the work that you have done and the administrative team has done has a lot to do with that. So that's all I had. This is our aggregate evaluation. This incorporated everything that I received from the members of our school committee. So with that, again, thank you for everything that you've done. Thank you for a successful year and a half, and we'll look forward to continuing our work.
It's a lot to digest.
Yeah.
I bet, right?
Yeah.
I think about 4 pages. Yeah.
I'm thinking that if we delivered anything like this during our performance evaluations at work, probably somebody would beat us up and then walk out. But yeah. This is a funny process again.
Yeah.
I don't know any other evaluation. There may be some examples, but I don't know. That takes place in front of a camera, in front of everybody. We just basically say, okay, you know, these are the things that happened. You did this. You did not do that.
Yeah.
Again, the fact that you mentioned problem solving on so many occasions and were able to identify those problems only through transparency and trust for each other, I think that's important. But I can't imagine that this is an easy process for folks who are just sitting at the other end of the table and thinking that, hey, you know what, good things I heard, but something, some curveball may come out of it. We just didn't want, just to make sure, there are a lot of great things that happen in our district, but we did not want some of the opportunities to be overlooked. Some of them you will see as significant progress. Some of them you will see as needs improvement. And we hope that they will be some of the problems that we're going to be focusing on in the coming days and months.
So, usually, you know, when a person is evaluated, there's, you know, some back and forth, but, you know, this is a lot of information.
Yeah.
So I just wanna throw out there that, you know, if there are questions or, you know, anything that's worthy of more discussion, that, you know, I hope that, you know, even if it's not in your brain right now, but as
Right.
you kinda digest all of this, that, you know, you feel free to bring it back and we can talk about it.
Absolutely.
There's a lot more detail in this.
Yeah.
So when I
Yeah.
get that,
Yeah.
I think it would
Yeah.
be helpful. I think, you know, one of the things I try to say to all of the staff and all of the students is that when you receive feedback, you know, it does take some time to reflect on, you know, what is this saying? What is it saying about my practice? What is it saying, you know, and how can I build some time to see that in terms of the larger picture? So if it's around communication or, you know, whatever, are there places on the strategic plan that things can be embedded in? Is there, you know, are there places at the instructional leadership team level at the schools? Are there places at the district leadership team level that improvements can be made in my practice, so that, you know, I am modeling my expectation for being able to receive feedback and then take a reflective stance, but then also take action on some of those. And, you know, we surveyed principals last year, and the result of that is embedded in their goals for this year, so that they go back to their staff and say, you know, this was the result, and these are the things that I'm going to do differently, or give me more input and insight into how I can do this differently, so that maybe it's you didn't feel supported, or, you know, whatever the area or issue of concern might be. That's a huge culture shift. to be able to be that open, and expect that because the superintendent is doing it, the principals are doing it, the teachers are doing it, the students will do it too. So how do I give and receive feedback as a student? Having students give feedback to the teachers and survey at the end of the year or at the end of their course. All of that is important in our mission of helping kids become, students and, who are civically minded, service-oriented, academically sound, and able to really make a difference in the world that they're going to encounter. So that's, it's an exciting thing. It takes a little time because it's a little overwhelming. I couldn't write it all down. But yeah, it'll be very interesting to see where the leverages are, where the levers are.
It's
And
hard, sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's hard to do this process because it's, like Emery said, it's so narrow. And I really struggled with, I didn't know where to put anything because it's very hard. But I think part of that also is that with you, it's been so easy to just be able to give feedback right away and get it back. So anytime I've had questions or not understood something, or even if I had a complaint, which I don't remember having any, but really it's because I was able to just either email you or pick up the phone and say, hey, what's this about? And we were able to talk about things and figure it out right then in the moment. And so therefore, when I got to this, I almost was too overwhelmed because it's not a real process.
Yeah.
But I was able to have a real process in real time with you, and that makes a huge difference. So I appreciate that very much.
I think I struggle, I think I mentioned to you, I struggled with that sheet of what they said to be looking for versus what I was able to see and what I was able to gather in my own short time on the committee. And know that a lot of this stuff was like a shift in the whole thought process, and that takes a long time to change, and it's like, where are we, right? So that's where I struggle.
No, that's a great point. So to wrap it up then, I will focus on something that you just said. Each one of these is meant to drive some thought, action, whatever it might be. If it's not clear, it doesn't have to be next meeting. Just whenever, if you look at it and you say, we were talking about something like that, and, you guys gave me this document and this doesn't make any sense at all, feel free to let us know and we can have that. Thank you. Did you have any questions? You good?
No, and I respect that this is a difficult document to work with. I think our principals also struggle because the teacher evaluation system is very similar, with the exception of they are going in halfway through the year to do more of what you would want to do, which is just write and just say, I observed this, I'm observing this, I'm observing this, here's some feedback. So it's a little bit more natural, organic. But when all of us sit around the table and say, this is really difficult, and especially the difference between proficient and exemplary, where you're modeling these behaviors, as opposed to just demonstrating them, you're actually inviting people, to school committee to watch you, do whatever standard you think you're doing really well at. We're just, we're in the thick of it. So getting to that, I'm very, and I say this to staff all the time, proficient is excellent. That is where the majority of us will lie, and exemplary in, a few standards or indicators is spot on for us. And there are years, and I say this to staff as well, there are years where, you may have more time to be exemplary because you are teaching a course, you are doing one of the work groups for professional development, so you're able to model a lot of the indicators. That's not every year, and so that's okay.
Absolutely. So I will upload the document in our drive, and it's yours again if you have any questions. please let us know, and thank you. We have a policy section.
Wasn't this to vote on the
Yes.
final
Yes.
policy?
For section C and I.
Yes.
So we had already our first reading. In fact, we had a conversation on one of them for a second time. Did everybody get a chance to look at the policies, the updated policy?
I have not.
Okay.
So there was two big, like one was like 15 or 20 pages, and the
Yes.
other one was like 8,000 pages or something like that.
That would be I.
It's 7,000 plus, but yeah, okay.
I read through the first one, and I'm absolutely fine if you want to move forward with that. But the second one, I basically just started, and I'm sorry, but I really like reading the policies because it gives me a better sense of what's going on around. So I'm one of those weird people that'll
I
like,
now
sit there and
I
read job
now
aids
agree
and
with you. Yeah, yeah.
read policies.
And I rely on people like you,
Yeah.
to be honest with you, because I don't read them in the same way. I take a broader view as I'm reading through it.
So there is really no harm in either. In fact, just to let you know, originally the policy approval was part of our consent agenda, and then we decided to take it out so that we can have this conversation a little more broadly and then vote on it. But a good number of hours were spent on the policies. Most of the changes that were made were to be consistent with the MASC standards. If that didn't make sense in some cases, we either stuck with what we had or a combination of the two. But there were a lot of good conversations going on. So we, as a subcommittee, wanted to offer it to everybody else for their reading. But if everybody consents and, we approve it as the updated policies of our school committee, we always have the opportunity to make further changes to these policies. I don't really foresee any changes in the near future, but, they're always there to make changes as times change, things change. We found a few things that were, I don't know, from how long ago, on things that we did not even understand what they were talking about.
Transportation was a big one. There was
Yeah,
a page of transportation, they must have had an issue with transportation at some point.
it was pages
Yeah.
after pages, every detail, you're gonna get on the bus this way, you're gonna get off
Yeah.
that way, type of thing, so,
Wow.
so.
Yeah, that was a result of something.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're a little overzealous. We created policies for things that were legally binding anyway. So there was some regulation or some statutory. Thank you.
Or we created process, which is under the purview of the schools to
Yeah.
implement, so.
Yeah.
In the student handbook or the parent handbook, so details that should have fallen in those documents were in policy.
So we are continuing our work, and we're going to be bringing the rest of the policies when they are finalized for the committee's reading, and then after the second reading approval. Today we are asking for approval for sections C and I, which are completely updated.
I will make a motion to approve section C and I
Okay.
of the school policy.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second that.
Okay. Any other questions, comments on the updated policies for section C and I? Okay, so all in favor to approve the updated sections, school committee policy sections C and I, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
How many more sections to go?
We have 2 or 3.
Two, we've made the comparison documents for 3. So the student intern will be putting those in a Word document for us.
And then I believe there's three, maybe two or three more.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So we will finish by this year, for sure. Yep.
Oh, we're gonna, you mean school year, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we're
By,
gonna,
by June,
yes.
yes.
In fact, Dan,
By May.
one of the things that
Before you leave.
we said,
Oh, really?
we said, hey, you know what? Deanne doesn't believe that we're gonna be
Right.
finishing these, before she leaves us.
We remember that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they will be ready by then.
Challenge.
Yes.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Superintendent's report.
Yes, so this is a little bit of a different report in that I focused a little bit on the professional development and strategic plan, more adult focused. So we've been very busy in the Granby Public Schools these past 2 weeks. The Strategic Planning Committee continues to meet. Our focus has been on developing strategies that will set Granby Public Schools on a firm foundation of learning and growth for everyone. The instructional leadership teams met for the first time and worked on developing their understanding of teacher leadership for improved student outcomes. Our students have participated in their first Blizzard bag assignments. Thank you to the feedback from families that we received. This is a learning process for everyone, so we are aware of families with students whose assignments took longer than they thought, so teachers are making accommodations for that, talking with students about expectations, so you can expect to see some changes, but we do appreciate the parent feedback and the student feedback on the assignments so that they can be appropriate for students. And I just said it, we look forward to gathering their input and feedback from staff and families regarding the pilot program. We continue to make plans for our students in grades 4 to 6 to move to the newly constructed part of the elementary school at East Meadow. And on February 16th, which is Friday, before vacation, we will begin our move.
Wow.
Wow, right? With movers on site that day. We also have plans to have our service learning students participate with us, and also our West Street teachers team up with our East Meadow teachers that day to help move. And that move would be complete so that students would be in the new part of the building when they return from February break. This certainly is an exciting time for students and staff and families and the community at whole. I had a chuckle with Chris Brownell here, the media center specialist, saying, you know, gee, are you guys going to leave me? Are you going to go over to the new school and have your school committee meetings over there? And I said, well, you know, maybe in the summer when it's hot. But we've been here. We've been here a long time. There's good karma here, so I didn't let her off the hook too quick. But thank you for that. And that's all I have today.
It's really fun to drive by every day and
It
watch
is.
And the
Oh
lights
my
are
gosh.
on at night now in the
Yeah.
classrooms. Yeah, it's really amazing.
I drive by every day when I go to work. It's so, every day I have to look. Like, what happened today?
What are the chairs like in, I'm just kidding.
They're gonna bring these over.
They actually, so for the time being, we are using the current furniture. So you will see there's like 1 million tennis balls on the chairs, thanks to Cheryl Danette's husband, I believe, right?
Yes, it was, and her
Who cut all of the tennis balls, and to Bill and everybody for going and getting them, so that we could be careful on the new floors until the new furniture came in. So, yeah,
yeah, and Cheryl Bennett's husband cut the,
yeah, and that's not easy, believe it or not, cutting tennis balls.
No.
It's probably
That's
easier
crazy.
to cut your hand.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you to them.
May I make a quick suggestion? Something that you mentioned here and in your report. Can we put something on the website that acknowledges everyone's feedback on the Blizzard
Sure.
pack?
Yep.
So that they know that it's gonna be informing some changes that we make to the process. Okay, thank you.
Cheryl, we talked about this, didn't you say that at the end of the whole winter season, that she would do a survey?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Staff,
That'll be
students, and
helpful.
families, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. This more is, you know, one of the things, in working with some of the other districts that have done this, it is a learning experience for teachers in developing assignments that are time constrained. Because there are teachers in other districts that and students ran into the same problem. It just took too long to get through the work that was that was assigned. So, also just, you know, as we laughed, you know, some expectation, you know, around you're supposed to do the assignment on the day, even though you have 5 days. That's for like a, you know, catastrophic experience, like, you know, your parents forgot to unlock the computer for you. You know, kudos to our middle school students who, you know, tried to push the envelope on that. But just some expectation, and hopefully some feedback as we're going along, but then also formally at the end, so we can make an informed decision.
Thank you. How does it affect the number of snow days?
So, we will not have snow days, as long as all of the, days that we would call as, canceled are blizzard bag days. I think there needs to be some discussion about, multiple days in a row where students would be losing direct instruction time, and whether or not we would do, multiple blizzard bag days in a row. I think that would be a challenge. And so, again, this is the year, I think, to think about those things and to get feedback from staff and families and students.
So it's not a snow day for students and teachers?
So it's a day of attendance. So in other words, we are scheduled, our last day, I believe, is June 13th this year. We will leave on June 13th, so we will not be making up any of these, any snow days that are assigned as blizzard bag days. Now, that's not to say if we get, you know, a 5-day stretch of a blizzard, that we might go beyond what we can handle in terms of having kids do work at home.
Because we don't want them to fall behind or not
Right.
get something that is crucial.
Right, and not have
in
time at the end to,
classroom.
right.
Yeah. The other thing, unrelated, but as Bill was talking to us about things that they do, he mentioned grandparents, and I was thinking, can we have a grandparents' day? You know, we have all these activities, we invite families, and grandparents show up, but we can call it Grandparents' Day.
You're thinking the, luncheon, the
Yeah.
Thanksgiving luncheon?
But I thought he had a grandparent luncheon too. Okay.
No, he's talked about it.
Okay.
You know, I swear when my kids were little, there was.
Yeah.
There was something like that at West Street.
Well, I was there when your kids were
I
little.
know.
And you know what? We would invite the grandparents in for a program. Sometimes it was around Thanksgiving, we would invite everybody in.
Yeah.
Or it would be around Halloween.
That's what I remember
That
it,
it was
yeah.
Halloween. And it was a little performance and we were in our costumes and, yeah.
I'm just out on the website now. Do we wanna put something about the move now and celebrate it, just?
Yep.
Next we have the collaborative.
Oh, yeah, I left that, so
Okay.
I brought that. So,
Alright.
He's off the hook. Bill did it.
I know.
Way to go, Mike.
He actually just spoke about a lot of the stuff he did at the last meeting, so, except it had more detail about what affected Granby specifically.
Yeah, that was good. I mean, it would be great to know what else is, because we're talking about special education, and special education is the specialty over there, and I don't know what that means in terms of us being able to cut some of the costs, if it's possible at all. So it would be good to hear that perspective. The school building committee.
The meeting was
we
moved
post- yeah.
because of the snowstorm, so we are meeting on Thursday.
So we don't have, I think the policy subcommittee, we're gonna continue to meet.
Yeah, there's a doodle. Did you do your
yeah.
doodle?
I don't know which doodle.
Do your
doodle.
I think I did anything that came to me, but we're gonna be meeting
Okay.
soon to finalize the 2-3 sections that we're
Mhm.
working on. We're on track to complete it before the end of the school year. All right, so that's all we have for standing reports. Was there anything else that we did not talk about, or anything that should be included in our upcoming meeting or meetings? Okay. All right, so with that, we have a executive session. We will vote to enter into executive session under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Part A3, to discuss strategy with regard to collective bargaining, as doing so in an open session may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the committee. The committee will not return to open session. Can we have a roll call, please?
Deanne Payne-Murkowski, aye.
Marie McCourt, aye.
Emery Evan, aye. Thank you. Have a good evening.